Thank you very much for joining us on the Voice of Job Seekers podcast. I'm your host, Mark. If you're looking to conduct a modern job search, you've come to the right show. Bring relatable voices and advice to the unemployed, underemployed, and unappreciated members of the workforce. I hack and reimagine the new job search and provide techniques and tools to the modern job seeker. If you want to conduct a modern job search and you don't know how or where to start, then get my free job search guide at bit.ly/118 job search tips. And of course, that will be in the show notes. Once again, I have Hannah Morgan with me on the line. At least we talk about once a year. She's a U.S. News and World Report contributor and also is the founder and host of careersherpa.net. How are you, Anna?
I'm great, Mark. Thanks for having me here.
Sure, it's always great talking to you. Like I said, this has become our annual thing about the same time as I was checking my notes from last year. It's always fun to have you. Let's
Thanks.
jump into it, though I've already hogged a lot of your time before we before we got on the show. Um, we are trying to figure out ways people can stand out in 2018. Uh, it's getting a little bit harder as it's become a little bit noisier. But I think that people are still not willing to go all the way down the road. I think some people have a limit on what they want to do, not realizing if they haven't tried more than two or three things that they really, you're going to run into a wall. So I guess for you, Hannah, when you hear someone asks you about standing out, what would that mean for an average job seeker without necessarily having a specific profile?
Yeah, so I think in my mind, I think that my hope is and my wish is that any job seeker, anybody in their career is well known or well respected or sought after because they know how to do something well.
Mm-hmm.
Whether it is streamlined processes or they've got a really great handle on how to treat customers or whatever. They're known for something, right? And
Mm-hmm.
it's a form of branding. But when you think about buying anything, we have our go-to sources. If you needed advice on where to go to get a new TV antenna, there are certain people you would go ask that question of today, right?
Mm-hmm.
Now, we don't have to pay them money, but we know who those go-to people are. In our professional life, we might have some go-to sources for industry news or things like that. We rely on them to provide us with good information. Employers are the exact same way. They have go-to sources that they use to get information, or they're looking for go-to sources that they can convert either into new customers or partners or employees.
Mm-hmm.
So, we all work on this human basis of we're going to go where we can get our questions answered. That's why we go to Google,
Mm-hmm.
right? We
Right.
Google a question before we actually try and ask people. And when we Google something, we get the top page search results and we see, okay, which ones do we have we used before or do we have we heard of? Which ones sound credible? And we'll go read them. Well, the same thing is true for questions to career problems or job problems. If the job seeker thinks about themselves as, I am somebody who has built a reputation on solving this kind of a problem for companies or employers or clients resolving these kinds of issues, then I already have that reputation of being somebody who knows how to answer those questions. And I become sort of a go-to
Mm-hmm.
person.
Yeah. And I think that is the number one way for people to capture the imaginations and the minds of employers is being the resource. And not just being the resource, that you're also able to treat people well, that you're able to answer questions with tact instead of having your head filled with your own self and being in your own
Right.
way. I think a lot of that also has to come across too, that people like you and they like coming to you. Not that you just have all the answers and that you're willing to dispense them right away. You see that a lot on all of the networks, where there's somebody who wants to be the go to person, but they end up just being in their own way because they're just giving the answer instead of trying to seek what people really need and want. And the questions that people ask aren't initially the ones they really want to know. They want to know more, but that's where they're starting. And that's sort of the mentality you have to have, is that people are after something more. If I can get down and drill down to what that is, I can be that go-to resource. But you also have to treat people with the respect and the dignity and great customer service as you will.
Absolutely, and I think that that likability factor is so important. You know,
Hmm.
what good is being the smartest person in the room if nobody wants to talk to you,
Right,
right?
right, right. Absolutely. And I think that I've seen it when people come across and when they ask me questions online, and or when I've seen people write these. To me, they're self-absorbed LinkedIn posts sometimes where they're answering a question after they've written this long, it seems like diatribe, uh, and you know, yeah, you're getting a lot of likes, but I don't see where people are really engaging you. And just because you have people responding on your thread doesn't mean you're getting the true engagement that's attracting anyone.
Right, there's 2 levels or maybe even 3 levels of engagement. One is that like, and that's an easy, okay, that's not really even engagement, right?
Right.
That most important measure of, am what is what I'm saying resonating with my audience? Is it getting them to think? That's when the comments start to happen.
Yeah.
That's really the value.
Yeah, yeah, and I think employers and people who want to refer you are going to have a sense, and they may not be able to put their finger on it, but people have a good sense of, okay, is this somebody I wouldn't mind working with 8 hours a day?
Well, yeah, and some people have called it the airport test. Can I see myself being stranded in an airport with this person for
Interesting.
like yeah.
Yeah, that's interesting, but you know, these days with what we know, what we've seen online, it's lasted this long. I would say the true um, the it's past a 10-year test per se. Um, I think people are starting to think that getting attention equals getting hired. I'm starting to feel some of that for those who really do take the step forward and say, okay, I'll do some blogging, I'll do some LinkedIn, I'll do a little Twitter, I'll do a little Facebook. But I think people are starting to, those two worlds are starting to collide, but they really don't. And I think there's somewhat of a difference. I mean, sometimes getting attention could equal getting hired, and we've seen that, and we've seen the sensationalism of that. But how can people comment, present themselves, stand out essentially in a way that brings them the right time, right kind of attention and getting hired, or at least getting an interview, as opposed to just being attention seeking?
Right, being noisy just for the sake of being noisy. Uh,
Yes.
you know, Mark, I don't think they're going to like the answer to this question because the answer to this question, I think, is the same answer on why networking for a lifetime is so important. If you are trying to get attention for the sole purpose of landing your immediate next job, and that is all,
Mm-hmm.
I don't think your tactics are going to work
Right.
or won't work as well. They will feel loud and noisy and obnoxious,
Mm-hmm.
right? But if the right thought process is there for a job seeker and they're saying, okay, I'm in this for the long haul. Not only am I serious about sharing knowledge, sharing information, being, being able to provide help to people who need it. I want to do this throughout the rest of my career. I'm ready to invest in that.
Mm-hmm.
I think when they make that switch to this is a long-term thought process, then I think you can get a lot more creative and you can have a lot more resources that are meaningful. So rather than just being that person who is networking and taking, why don't more people become that person who is a facilitator of networking with other people? And the
Mm-hmm.
reason they aren't is because if you haven't met enough people, you don't know enough people because you're only doing this networking for the short term, then you can't match people together as easily. But if your life focus is to network and meet people, then you will always have a pool of people that you know that will benefit from meeting one another. So that is oftentimes one of the greatest ways somebody can set themselves apart. Introduce two people who should have met a long time ago because they have mutual business interests, or there's
Mm-hmm.
something there that you think that they would benefit, industry knowledge, whatever it is. Bringing people together is a great way to get attention.
Yeah.
You're making two people really happy.
Yes, absolutely. I think um, I've written about this recently. Is you need to figure out how to stay in demand and to be able to sustain that for some years, not to use as just as a hiring tactic, but to stay engaged yourself. If and I've said this before, and I think I even said that this when we've discussed this. If you're not lending your voice to the larger uh, to the industry at large, you're kind of not going to see the results that you want to see. And I think that people are expecting to get it done within a certain month, and to the fault of people who've been successful, they say, "Yeah, we can get you success in 3 months and 6 months." And as you and I know, that is not even the beginning of the journey.
Right.
And that skews people's expectations.
Yeah, and that's sad. I mean, this is a long-term investment in relationships. And what I don't think many people realize is that all of the relationships that you now have will at some point in the future, whether it's 5, 10, 15 years, be of value to you, but only if you continue to nurture them.
Yeah, yeah, and it is a nurturing. If you've known somebody for 2 or 3 years, 4 years, 5 years, at least there should be one time you've had a phone conversation, I would think. But there are a lot of relationships that are out there that they've never had that interaction before, and they want to put the word friend to it. But really, when it comes, as you know, that really doesn't work in real life.
No, no. And I think LinkedIn is such a farce. I mean, the platform itself is very well thought out, right? It makes sense.
Right.
But what most people do not understand is that being connected with somebody means absolutely nothing
Hmm.
unless you talk to that person
Right.
either on the phone or in real life. I mean,
Right.
what? It's empty. I don't understand where people are coming from.
Well, I kind of do. People think, and you've written about this. It's not a Rolodex, but that's how people treat it because that's what was offered when 2007, 2008 when you signed on. So, oh, you should be here so you can be found. But you know, in 2018, you should be found with substance so that people will want to have a conversation with you. Uh, Even if they don't have a conversation with you, at least there is something substantive that you can be associated with, like your profile, so that people can come to you and say, "Hey, you seem to be knowledgeable about this area. I have a question," and that's where
Right.
it can even start. But for most people, yeah, it was, you know, we see this in hindsight now that it's not a Rolodex, but ultimately that's the way it was presented because that's the way most people thought of it when it
Yeah,
first
I
began.
know. You're right. You're right. Well, one of the articles that I recently wrote, and you shared and commented on, sort of had those 5 things that you can do to
Hmm.
sort of stand out. And one of the ones that you commented on, and a lot of people sort of liked, was creating sort of a regular newsletter,
Yes.
and keeping in touch with people that way. And that I think is too many people don't do that. It's an easy way to stay in touch with people. I don't
Yes.
know why more people don't do that personally.
Well, people, I think, well, the person I know that does it, he goes to my job lab, which I do once a month. And that's how he's kept up. And he had to kind of do some merging of worlds. He had to take his consulting and make it his full-time job, and he was very successful in doing that. And but yet he's still trying to keep people in the loop. So he sends, I think, about once a quarter a newsletter saying, "This is what I'm doing X,
Mhm.
Y, Z." It's not flashy. It is
Right.
straightforward. It's short, and it is interesting enough that if I had a question, if I wanted, and I didn't see him, I can go and say, "Hey, his email and his phone number's there. Let me contact it and make it real easy for him." Now
Right.
we can a whole nother discussion is who you should put on that email newsletter, but nevertheless, that is a great way for the people that you've at least had a conversation with or had some interaction with, or maybe you might have a blog that kind of gives a portfolio of your career, and you've invited people to sign up and they voluntarily, notice the
Mhm.
word volunteer, uh,
Yeah,
signed up for your newsletter, then those are the people that you would want to be a part of.
absolutely. Yeah. I think it's an ingenious way of staying in contact. It's not spammy if it's done well. It's almost like those holiday letters, that people send out. This is what's been going on over the course of the year,
Sure.
except the year instead of a year, it's the last 3 months. It's a great way to stay in touch with people. We're so busy.
Yes, we are.
I don't have time to go catch up with everybody on Facebook and wherever else they may be.
Right, right, right. And I think people are looking for the one off, the one thing that'll make me stand out. And sorry to tell you, people, hate to cut it to you, but it doesn't exist. Despite what all everybody says on LinkedIn, yeah, you should do this. uh, Come to my webinar. I can teach you ways, and those ways don't always work for everybody. Even if they offer 10 ways to stand out, you still got to kind of work through them and work through them according to your personality and the space that you want to provide for people.
Right, right. And especially that flashy stuff,
Yes.
some of that stuff is not received well in certain very conservative industries,
Hmm.
or and we don't even know what the audience will be.
Right.
And, if the person who would actually be hiring you, not the HR person, but the hiring manager, is very old school and they want to see a one-page traditional sterile resume, and you're giving them anything else other than that, that's not going to work.
Right. Right. Because
Um,
not everybody, and that's just goes to another point about standing out. You got to know how to stand out in that particular industry. I'll give you another example. I have a friend of mine that I know personally. I've known for years. He sent me a note. He says, I see that you share a lot, and you know, you may chase away the people who are connected to you. And I'm like, okay, obviously his audience is a whole lot different than my audience. So I said, I tell you what, I can modify where I share this, but honestly, in my space, the people who are I'm connected to, which are a lot of career professionals or people who follow me because I share 3, 4 times a day, I can put you somewhere where you won't see that. He said, "Oh, okay." But later on, I see that he ends up sharing 3 or 4 times a day, and all that to say that people have different ideas. They think that their audience is your audience, that they're speaking to the same group of people. And because you connect it out of that audience, you don't know what that is. But the whole idea is that you should know your audience and how much they tolerate your sharing, or what you share, or how you share. I know for a fact that some people don't want to see anything political at all, or anything outside of their industry at all. And you've got to be savvy enough to know what people want. All of a sudden, Hannah, I can't hear you.
Can you hear
Yeah,
me
I
now?
can hear you now. You turned on your mute switch. I understand.
I was muted.
Yes.
Um, no, I hear what you're saying, and I think that people get frustrated because they're like, "Well, I don't know who my audience is." Well, that's where they have to step back and go back and figure out who their audience is. In general terms, because this is what marketers do, right?
Yes.
Businesses identify who their ideal persona is.
Hmm.
What is the person in a hiring manager's seat? What do they look like? What's their demographic? What's their educational background? What do they do during their free time? What do
Hmm.
what publications do they read? If we can, even doing that exercise quickly, will help you understand, okay, if they're reading articles in Fast Company, let me go read some of those articles to get an idea of what they're doing and how the advertisements look there,
Hmm.
right? Just to get an idea of what your audience likes.
You've got to
Because it,
look through your list to see who's comprised of your audience, and to see who's participating, see who's listening. And it may take a while for you to figure out who it is. But then we're talking about the online space, but that goes for the offline space too. Who
mhm.
is most interactive? Who actually responds when you send an email? All of that. Every single person is a part of your audience. You may have different part of your audiences that have different tolerances. Some may tolerate more of that type of online communication where you're sharing, you're looking to interact, you're looking for feedback, as opposed to somebody who's not a part of that world. They expect something a little bit different, and you have to be able to communicate that way.
I think it's true with networking too, Mark. How many times have you had somebody say, I contacted somebody to network with them and they told me just to go to the job posting board. They didn't want to
Yes.
talk to me. Like some
Yes.
people, so I think that some people just don't understand networking, and that's you as a job seeker are not there to convert them all,
Right.
nor can you convert them all. Your job is to go find people who are already open to the idea of networking,
Yeah.
and to work with those people, because it's much easier to have those positive conversations with people who are already on the same lines as you are than to try and convince somebody that they should network with you.
Yeah. Absolutely. It's a difficult. It 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 takes a while to figure out.
Hmm.
So again, it goes back to that time issue and your expectations and what's realistic. You can't expect people are going to, when you get new information, it takes time to kind of filter through whoever you're trying to reach out to, and through your own message. I mean, you think about personally, what kind of message are you really sending when you're reaching out to people? Are you the one being helpful, or you're always looking at the one who needs help? And if you're
Hmm.
one who always needs help, uh, some people are going to start running because it's always asking for help. So,
Right. I know. Absolutely.
yeah, it's a headache. But anyway, I know that our time is kind of running a little short. I said I would get you out of here very soon. I did want to ask you a little bit about how, and you've done this last year. I think it was last year. Um, you and I, not collectively, you wrote an article for the salary negotiation guide that PayScale had,
Yeah, I saw
and
you just
and
wrote one too.
yeah, and I wrote one as well. But I think some people want to kind of source their audience to find out how about pay, and they're finding, and some people are finding that pay is, or trying to find out how much, they're trying to gather intel about what they can position themselves at as far as pay and compensation. And I was
Mhm.
just trying to see what your experience is when you point people in that direction, if you've gotten feedback about that, because I think for some people, they're still afraid of approaching that subject with others, even with people that they're familiar with.
I know. Listen, the only way this is going to work is if we take the risk and ask the question and we actually help people when we're being asked that question.
Hmm.
Right? I mean, you show me yours, I'll show me mine. How does that saying go? I'll show you yours if you show me mine, or how?
I'll show you mine if you show me yours, or
Right? Yeah,
it's
that's it.
something like that. Yeah.
Right. But the question really is not how much do you make, but what is the going rate for this kind of work that you've seen?
Hmm.
Right? That way you're not specifically asking the person for
Right.
money.
It was say
Um,
what are you hearing? What are you?
what
Um,
is the going rate for this kind of work?
yeah. Yeah. I think that's the most straightforward question that you can possibly ask, uh, and that's still with doing your own research,
Yeah.
using the sources that you have. There's no shortcut, and I think that's a mistake that people
Yeah,
use.
many times those online salary calculators love them, but that's not the end all be all. That's just one data point, and anybody that's smart knows that they need to have a couple of different data points to make an intelligent decision.
Yeah. Yep. So if you're not using salary.com, payscale.com, and glassdoor.com, you're not getting a full scope of what, because they have the largest and they update regularly. I know
Mhm.
there's a lot of them out there that are just static. They've
Mhm.
just been there for a long time. There was one I ran across, somebody shared one, where the last information they had was 2015. And a year, especially when it comes to salary and when it comes to technology,
Yeah, it's a
is
long time.
it's a lifetime. It's light years. Another great place is if you work in technical area, Paysa, paysa.com is another place where they are constantly updating those fields in technology as far as salary and expectations. But yeah, there's so many common denominators. Um, so you're networking, you're trying to find out salary information. Um, it's not going to work unless like Hannah said, the risk is in asking the question, and you can ask in a way that kind of will take away some of the defensiveness
Mhm.
out of it. So, anything else you want to add to this conversation before we take off here, Hannah?
No, but I do want to encourage everybody to, follow you on LinkedIn and on Twitter and follow your page on Facebook because I think that by following you, they're going to get access to so much great information. And I think I haven't read it, but I'm pretty sure congratulations needs to go out to you, Mark, for making the list of top podcasts by
Ah, yes.
Max List,
Yes,
correct?
yes, yes. Made it again.
Congratulations on that.
Thank you very much. Thank you. And thank you, Hannah. And people can follow you at careersherpa.net. And of course, on Twitter, you're at Career Sherpa. And of course, your page is Career Sherpa. Everything's Career Sherpa for you.
Yeah,
Uh,
trying to keep it that simple.
yeah, I know it's kind of hard. But thank you, the rest of you, for listening in to our conversation. If you have any questions at all, you can go to the Voice of Job Seekers.com. You can press the send voicemail button and you can leave it right there. You activate your microphone on your laptop, and then I'll get it and I can respond. Just make sure that I can understand it. And for some of you who are international, um, do the best English that you could possibly can, because that's the only language I can understand. Um, some of you, you sound great in the language, beautiful, but unfortunately, I don't speak those, and I can't answer that question. You can always email me to at mark at thevoiceofjobseekers.com, and I hope that sounds Correct. I want to be sensitive to a lot of my international listeners. But in the meantime, we will see you next time on the Voice of Job Seekers podcast. Okay, that